In. Yeah, we have a great class today, live class at Atlantic International University. With us today is Rebecca Taylor to give part two of the risks and benefits of fasting. I will put up the link to part one so in chat so you can click on that and get the link to it and watch part one so that you can get prepared for part two because it's going deeper now. Okay, Rebecca Taylor, are you ready to go?
Yes, I am. Hello, everyone, again. Nice to see you, and I hope you are doing well on the run up to Christmas. Just it's coming thick and fast for me. I'm definitely not ready, but 2 more weeks to go, is it? But yes, I'm going to be talking today about. Well, I'm going to carry on really our conversation from trying to think when it was, maybe 6 weeks ago. I'm going to hazard a guess. It was about 6 weeks ago that we had our first talk on the risks and benefits of fasting. So in that session, we really talked about what fasting is, of course, the different kind of approaches people take to fasting, time restricted eating, intermittent fasting, and those kind of more longer fasts as well, and also why fasting has become so popular. This was a slide from my last presentation, which I've just kept up here just as kind of as a refresher. So yeah, we kind of talked a bit about the evidence-based benefits of fasting. So things like improvements in blood sugar, obviously weight management being a big one, heart health, cellular health, longevity, and also some of the risks and limitations potentially. So things like around nutrient intake, performance for exercise, our mental health even. So we talked about quite a wide variety of things. Oh, and also the difference between men and women with fasting, but we're going to go a bit more into detail about that today because I think that's quite interesting. And I guess one of the key messages we talked about was how fasting can be a tool, but it's not a magic solution. Like everything in nutrition, we can use them as a tool in the toolbox, but it's not going to be that kind of magic pill that maybe we all hope in some way it might be. And its effectiveness really depends on things like our stress levels, hormones, particularly for women, of course, lifestyle, our diet quality, and just our individual makeup and even genetics, physiology. So yeah, today we're going to be building on that all kind of foundation that we spoke about. And you can refresh yourselves with the slides which have been posted. Have a quick look through those as well. So yeah, today we're going to go deeper into what actually happens in the body at different fasting lengths and what fasting means for women specifically, how it impacts our gut health. I have to, of course, talk about gut health because that is my specialty, and even our mental well-being, and what the research actually says about fasting for weight loss and focus and longevity, those sort of three areas too. So you can think of today as kind of like the next layer, the like nuance and context that's going to help us understand when fasting is helpful and when it isn't. And please put your questions in the chat box as we go, and we can answer those at the end. I do have to have quite a hard stop finish at 4 today, so I will keep my talking maybe a bit shorter. Great. So Dr. Lambert's nodding there. So I'll maybe I'll see how long. I do have quite a lot to get through, but I won't talk at you for too long. Maybe 35 minutes, if that's okay. Great. And oh, this again was my slide from the last presentation, and the different fasting, well, what we mean by fasting, but actually that's not really necessary for me to go through because we're going to be going exactly through that now. So actually, I thought it'd be quite interesting to look at a timeline of what exactly happens in the body hour by hour. And just so you can understand that we talk about fasting as one, I guess we talk about it as a whole thing, but each step is so different in the body. The physiology of what's happening is so vastly different. You can't really talk about fasting as a whole unit. It has to be really broken down into these different sections on the timeline to really understand more about, yeah, what's really happening with the hormones and what's happening in the body in that exact time frame. So let's start with what's happening in the first few hours after we eat. And during this phase, 0 to 4 hours, the body's in this kind of fed state, or it's called the fed state. And insulin is high, blood sugar rises, and the body is using glucose as its main fuel source. This is just how a healthy body works. And this is just, yeah, a normal phase of events. So this is also where we'll be storing energy as glycogen in the liver. So that's stored glucose in our liver and our muscles. And any excess that we don't need would be stored as fat. So this phase is actually really important for metabolic health and hormone balance, especially for women. So we often think fasting is beneficial and is told us told to us in the media that it is this really good thing most of the time. But this fed state is actually where repair happens, muscle building happens, and nervous system regulation happens. So, I mean, no surprise, we need food to thrive and survive. But being in this fed state is a healthy thing. So, of course, fasting doesn't replace the need for eating well, and it works very much alongside it. Let's go into the next stage, 4 to 12 hours. So after the first few hours that we've just gone through, digestion is complete, and your body then starts to rely on that stored energy. The hormone insulin drops and glucagon rises, and glucagon is a hormone. It's released by your pancreas to release glucose. It tells the body to release energy, basically. So your liver will then start releasing that stored glucose to keep your blood sugar stable, because obviously you're not getting that energy through food, so your body's going to have to start getting it from its own stores at that point. So this is the beginning of what we would call metabolic flexibility, and that's that ability to shift between using carbohydrates for energy and using fat for energy. And this is a really healthy thing for the body to actually learn and adapt to do well. So it's one thing if I'm working with a weight loss client, I would often get them to kind of have a little bit of work on metabolic flexibility and potentially stretching out those eating hours, because it gets your body into this carbohydrate burning state, which is what we're in most of the time, to then a fat burning state and using your stored energy in the form of fat. So this is a good thing in a lot of instances to actually get the body to be adaptive to. So yeah, some people will feel hungry here, others won't. And this is where you really need to stay hydrated and yeah, keeping hydrated and rested is going to be helpful here as well, because you're going to start getting more cortisol rising as well, which is our stress hormone. And into our next stage, 12 to 24 hours. By this 12 to 24-hour mark, your liver glycogen's probably starting to run a bit low. So that is when your body's going to shift into that longer term fat burning mode, really getting into those fat cells to release the fat and use that as energy. So you could say it's kind of the golden stage potentially if we're looking at weight loss. Ketones start rising, so that's these ketones are where your body's using those fat molecules to get into fat burning mode. And with that, a lot of people notice this surge in mental clarity and really sharp focus, but other people might feel more irritable or fatigued. So it can go both ways. But yeah, this is called a ketogenic state. Hence, if you probably heard the keto diet, it's kind of the goal is that people get into this ketogenic state where they're producing ketones and they're not burning carbohydrates for energy. So yeah, you can often people have these little like strips where they wheel on them to see if they're producing ketones to check that they are managing to um, get into that state. Yeah, and usually you need to be on a kind of really low carbohydrate diet, like 10% carbohydrates, or you're fasting for this longer period of time. So, of course, I have to mention again, super key point that fasting in this stage will affect people really differently. Things like your baseline level of stress, your hormones, how you're sleeping, your normal diet quality, even your personality can actually influence whether someone feels good or you feel awful here. And oh, and we also have to be careful a bit at this stage of muscle protein breakdown. That can start to begin at this stage. So that's a potential negative point of these extended fasts. As you'll see, we're kind of tipping more into like the positives to the negatives, maybe from like this sort of point onwards. Um, so 24 to 72 hours. This is the phase often discussed in that kind of longevity fasting. And autophagy, that is where our cell cleanup and recycling process happens. So it's a good thing. You do want it to be happening. And as we get older, autophagy slows down, and it's basically that clear up process of old cells that just need to be kind of killed off and got rid of, and or recycled. Um, so yeah, this is a phase where that's going to come up. It's going to go on the rise, which is a good thing. So yeah, there's benefits, but there's also risks. Beyond 24 hours, muscle breakdown continues to increase, and thyroid output can start dropping, particularly a risk for women. And cortisol, our stress hormone, also rises to keep blood sugar stable. So it's a stressor for the body, basically. And this, I would say, this stage is where fasting should be done very intentionally, not casually or frequently, in my opinion. You do get a surge of this growth hormone, though, which is beneficial. Yeah, that is a good thing. Um, but yeah, the extent to these hormones dropping and rising is, of course, individual as well. So I'm kind of, it's a bit of a blanket, me saying they rise and they drop. Yeah, we don't know exactly to what extent, unless we could see the individual. Right, the high risk zone, 72 plus hours. After this point, the risks definitely begin to outweigh the benefits for most people. So from the research, it shows that muscle loss really accelerates here. And the immune system even starts to become suppressed, not a good thing. And hormones become suppressed as well, not a good thing either. So refeeding syndrome as well is a risk because that means you're kind of getting this influx of like electrolytes, and the body doesn't really know how to handle it if it's had a period of starvation. So that would need to be done really carefully and properly if you're going to have like a 3-day fast here. And yeah, I mean, a lot of people look for these extreme fasting protocols online, but really, I've got to say they're not safe for most individuals, especially women. And yeah, for the reasons I've said, I mean, refeeding syndrome that can actually be fatal. So big warning sign on that one. So just a quick recap here of what I just said. So 0 to 4 hours, you're in that fed state, insulin's high, you're storing and using glucose, and the body is focused on digestion and recovery. All good. 4 to 12 hours, we're in that post-absorptive phase, insulin drops and the liver releases stored glucose, and metabolic flexibility begins. So also good. And 12 to 24 hours, fat burning increases and ketones start rising. This is where some people will start feeling clearer mentally, whilst others will feel more irritable, tired. So still good. And 24 to 72 hours, autophagy and immune cell recycling increases, but cortisol also rises and the risk of muscle loss begins to appear. So this is where we're like in that kind of iffy territory. And then beyond 72 hours, the risks outweigh the benefits for most people, including muscle breakdown, hormonal suppression of thyroid hormones, and electrolyte issues as well become more likely. So I'm going to say the key message is that different fasting lengths obviously create very different physiological effects, and more and longer isn't always better. Okay, now going into how women respond differently. Sorry, men, if this isn't so interesting for you. Although maybe it'll be interesting. You can tell a female in your life, and you can kind of fill them in with your knowledge here because I was listening to a really well-known podcast the other day about fasting, and they didn't once mention the difference between women and men. And I thought that was very disappointing to only give one angle because the research has really only been done on men. So how can we possibly translate it directly to females? Um, so women respond really differently to fasting because our hormonal system is basically much more sensitive to stress and energy availability. Cortisol also tends to rise much more dramatically and sharply in women when fasting, and they're going to feel more of an effect with their mood, anxiety levels, and their sleep too. And of course, the menstrual cycle plays a huge role in when you'd want to choose to fast and how you'd want to do it. Women often tolerate fasting better in that follicular phase. Pardon me. Because so in the follicular phase, that's where estrogen is rising and that supports insulin sensitivity. And that's that first half of the cycle. In the second half of the cycle, which is the luteal phase, the body much prefers that more consistent energy. It wants to feel really safe. And fasting can make the body feel very unsafe. And it can actually worsen PMS, cravings, anxiety, all those really fun things. And actually, there's some research as well showing that long fasting windows might disrupt ovulation in some women. So that's a big one. You know, we don't want to be really negatively affecting important things like fertility. So, yeah, menstruating women do need to be careful about again those long fasts. And yeah, have I mentioned everything on this slide? Sorry, I'm just overcoming a bit of an illness, so a little bit of tick in my throat. Bit more on the increased cortisol side of things. That's quite a problem for women because yeah, it's going to affect our sleep more and anxiety, like I mentioned, and tend to get a bit more of that fat storage around the abdomen, which we know is the most dangerous place to store fat because we don't want it around our organs. That's kind of the most dangerous type of fat area or fat storage area for the body. And yes, suppresses our reproductive hormones. Right, so that's one out of 3 points I think I've got here. And secondly, women are far more prone to thyroid suppression under calorie or carbohydrate restriction. So hormones, particularly one called T3, and that helps support our metabolism, can drop with long-term or aggressive fasting. And it's actually quite common to see this low thyroid. I mean, it's quite, I think I see it quite a lot in women, low thyroid, and that can be due to long-term undereating and not giving the body enough nutrition. But yeah, of course, fasting is going to exacerbate that and kind of condense it. And so yeah, this is going to show up as fatigue, cold hands and feet, or weight plateaus, just a slower metabolism in general, hair thinning, um, yeah, I can't remember the stats exactly, but a lot of people, a lot of women do struggle with underactive thyroid. And oh, I've mentioned a little bit about the menstrual cycle and how you want to plan. If you are wanting to fast, how would you plan that? So, yeah, women tolerate fasting better in the follicular phase, that first half of the cycle, because estrogen, that surge of estrogen supports insulin sensitivity. Um, and I've got this little diagram here. So, yeah, day 1 to 12, that's the best time to fast, really. Um, or particularly after day or 2 or 3, because day 1 counts as the period, and I think a lot of people wouldn't necessarily want to be fasting on their period. So yeah, better time would be sort of after your cycle ends, um, and estrogen production peaks on day 12 to 14. So you can continue fasting up till then, but probably no longer than 15 hours fasting. And then progesterone production peaks at day 21 to 28. So you want to avoid fasting, and that's because your hormones are likely to get a bit more disrupted in that later stage. And it also needs more, the body needs more calories as well in that second half, because progesterone increases metabolic rate, increases your hunger. I'm sure the women in the room can relate to that. And it also reduces your stress tolerance. You're more likely to get higher cortisol. And that's the phase where fasting is likely to backfire a bit more. And last slide for the women. I mean, I've just basically summarized what I've said. And if you tick those boxes on the left, that's probably your green flag. You're starting to potentially go ahead with shorter fasts, maybe probably not wanting to do more than that 16-8 fast, where you would be fasting for 16 hours and eating in an 8-hour window. I don't think any more than that is going to be beneficial for women. So yeah, I won't go through each of those because we've pretty much touched on all of those. Yeah, so I guess just talking about the nuance side of it, because every conversation in nutrition has to be nuanced. Fasting can be helpful for women, but only in certain contexts. If you've got low stress, good sleep, you've got stable cycles, yeah, you might do well with some gentle fasting. But if you're a woman who has a very stressful life, you do lots of intense training, you maybe suffer from a bit of anxiety or cycle irregularities, fasting might actually exacerbate some of those things and problems. So I guess think of this as a bit of permission that you do not need to fast to be healthy. And if you do fast, the window needs to be adapted to your body and not to some person on Instagram who or some male who does 72-hour fast and you think I have to do that too. So that can be your kind of permission slip there to not feel guilty about that. Now, moving on to the pros and cons of different fasting patterns, because I think this is quite interesting. Again, like the different phases and stages of fasting, there's so many different types of fasting, and there's really a lot of research indicating that some types of fasting are a lot more beneficial than others. So I will go through the main ones here, and this is the most kind of commonly talked about one really, is that time restricted eating. So this is where you have an eating time earlier in the day, and that might be like 7 till 3 or 8 till 4, that's those sort of hours. And this is probably maybe the most popular type of fasting pattern, I would say, because it's quite it's quite convenient for people who've got like early schedules. So um it's just quite a sort of natural one to follow, I guess, if you are going to work at 9 and you want to have some breakfast before, and then you're kind of just decide to after work, you don't have to worry about cooking dinner. So the only thing is, I guess it can be a bit socially challenging because you can't kind of go out to dinner with friends and things like that. Um, and if you're going to the gym in the evening as well, you're training, and it's not ideal in terms of you probably want to give your body some fuel after training, but with this, you wouldn't actually really be able to do that. And yeah, I suppose in terms of, I would say waking up and eating is a good thing, really a better thing to do than waiting hours to your first meal. That's a good thing for the body and the metabolism and your gut and everything. So, and actually for your insulin sensitivity, because you're most insulin sensitive in the earlier part of the day, it does make sense from that point of view. So yeah, it aligns quite well with our physiology in that way. So yeah, just some like best suited for, and avoid some extra text here. So it's quite a lot of text on here, but really this one has the best research behind it, as and it's yeah, strong level of evidence that it's beneficial for the body. Um, yeah, I'm just aware of the time, so I'm just going to not spend too long on each one. And just yeah, this is the sort of the late version of time restricted eating. So you might eat between like 12 and 8 in that 8 hour window. I guess yeah, for some people this is going to be easier to follow. It depends on the person. And a benefit is that might avoid that kind of mindless morning snacking. Um, and it works well for yeah, for students, for shift workers. If you're a student waking up in mid-morning, then you don't have too much long to wait to your first meal. Um, but yeah, the results from research show that it's not as dramatic for your metabolism really, compared to the earlier eating window. And yeah, I mean, in terms of eating late at night, that's a bit of a hot debated topic in nutrition. And I would say it's not ideal to eat right before bedtime. It can give you a bit of a blood sugar spike later on in the night. It can mean you're not going into quite as much of a deeper sleep as well. So I wouldn't recommend for someone, yeah, who's got sleep issues. They tend to kind of not go into a deeper sleep, or blood sugar crashes. Yeah, or even if you kind of have that morning anxiety, sometimes because we get this spike of cortisol in the morning, yeah, if you're not eating as well, that's going to cause a bit of a double spike. It's going to continue to stress the body out, basically, if you kind of don't fuel yourself. But that will be, yeah, some people are more like that than others. Personally, I couldn't think of anything worse than doing this kind of eating pattern because I have to eat breakfast as soon as I wake up. And yeah, so yeah, the benefits are less consistent, um, compared to the earlier eating pattern. And then next up, alternate day fasting. This, I guess, is not particularly common, maybe. So you've got that fast and feast day pattern, like maybe like eating about 500 calories on your fasting day and then eating normally the next day. And this one definitely can produce actually quite meaningful weight loss results, and has been shown to really improve cholesterol and triglyceride levels. So from that metabolic standpoint, quite could be quite a good one. And it's kind of an easier structure to follow, I suppose, rather than thinking about the different times in the day. You just know that each day you're either following one pattern or the other. But I suppose it's quite difficult to maintain long term. I'm not sure I could imagine myself doing that really in the long term, um, keeping that up. And yeah, you've got a high risk certainly of binge restrict cycles. That's that feast or famine kind of mode you're kind of switching from, like literally day to day. And yeah, energy, mood, and exercise, kind of keeping a level energy, stable energy with this kind of eating pattern, I would imagine is quite challenging. And yeah, this is kind of like probably not great for most females as well, I wouldn't say. And this is going to really be very supportive of women because of it's not taking into account that fluctuation through the cycle as well. And I wouldn't recommend, yeah, for someone who has a past of eating disorders as well. And oh, and this is my last one for this kind of section on different types of fasting. So this is where we're getting into danger territory of really prolonged fasts, like the 72-hour plus fasting, where often you're just having water or like really low calories. And I know, of course, we've spoken about in some religions that this is part of some processes. Yeah, so it's not. Some people will be doing this for maybe like once every year, um, but it's yeah for women. I know women as well kind of have that a slightly different um sort of like rules as well for women around menstruation, which is supportive definitely. But overall, the evidence is pretty weak for most people to be doing this, and only really specialist clinics, I would say, should be doing this kind of fasting, where they really have a lot of medical supervision. Um, but yeah, I suppose a big pro of this one would be that you're getting into that real deep autophagy process, and that's going to really kind of support longevity, um, your immune health, and yeah, it can work as quite a strong reset for some people, I suppose. But I do think the cons would outweigh the pros of this one. Just, I mean, you see that list of things, that all of those are quite severe risks of this kind of fasting, which we've spoken about a bit earlier as well. And so fasting for different goals. And I'll just talk about these three different goals that a lot of people who fast are going to be like probably one of these three or a mix of them. And I'm sorry, I didn't actually get to writing the text on these slides, but I have some of my notes. So sorry, lack of notes on this one. But yeah, weight loss, body composition. I mean, this is obviously a really common goal for a lot of people who are going into fasting. And yeah, for sure, we know fasting can support fat loss because it shifts the body towards fat oxidation once that liver glycogen, those liver and muscle glycogen stores run low. But also fat oxidation and fat loss aren't the same thing. So fat loss still comes down to overall calorie balance and diet quality. Um, and that can be put on quite, you can regain that fat very easily as well. And fasting, we know it doesn't automatically protect muscle tissue. Um, Protein intake and resistance training are what's needed for protecting that muscle tissue. So if you're not fasting, you really need to be making sure your protein intake is high and you're doing resistance training. So that's why a lot of people lose weight on fasting, but they end up actually with a poorer body composition overall if they're not fueling their body properly outside of the fasting window. So I guess a lot of people, the real advantage of fasting is actually just going to be that structure. They've got less eating events they have to worry about, less evening snacking to think about, and overall they're probably going to have a slightly better appetite regulation too. And is there anything else for me to say on this slide? Yeah, I suppose that stabilization of appetite is quite a key one where those two hunger hormones, I think I've spoken about them before, ghrelin and leptin, they tend to kind of, yeah, they tend to stabilize really when you have a bit more of a stable eating pattern. So fasting can help to regulate your hunger levels in that way. And yeah, sorry, again, no text on this one. This is definitely the area with the most hype, but the least human data around it. And that autophagy process is the key area around this longevity side of things. So it does increase with fasting, like I've mentioned, but we don't know yet the optimal timing or the frequency for humans. it's really only been done on animals so far. And yeah, of course, metabolism, lifespan, and conditions are completely controlled when it's in an animal study. So I don't think, we're at a place it can be translated into human results. Um, so I think for now, looking at the evidence, the safest and most evidence aligned approach would be for for longevity, sorry, is a gentle time restricted eating, solid nutrition and sleep and minimizing stress. Kind of the boring things that everyone doesn't want to hear. And lastly, cognitive focus and mood. And one of the reasons that fasting has become so popular is because so many people have reported better focus and productivity and mood. So, like I said, those ketones that we produce from fasting, they provide a really stable energy source for the brain. Your brain really loves to use ketones, and they also act as signaling molecules that help to manage inflammation and stress pathways, which is pretty cool too. So this can kind of give you that sort of like light or clear feeling that people describe a lot of the time from fasting. But fasting does increase cortisol, like I've said. So for individuals who are prone to anxiety, perfectionism, even low blood sugar drops, fasting can actually worsen things like your mood, irritability, overthinking. So it's definitely not universally helpful, and your mental health will really determine which direction this goes. Um, Whether it's kind of a brain booster for you or if it's a stress amplifier. And lastly, I'm going to only just spend a few minutes on fasting for gut health because, I can't believe the time already over 35 minutes talking. So, gut health, I think it's one of the most misunderstood areas when it comes to fasting because I think people often assume fasting gives your gut a break, so it must always be beneficial. But I think the reality is actually a lot more nuanced than that. And some individuals actually, they genuinely do feel better. They get less bloating, their digestion feels lighter, and their appetite kind of stabilizes. But for others, say, especially for those with constipation, anxiety, or hormonal sensitivity, fasting can definitely worsen symptoms. So we'll just have a look at what actually changes in the gut when we fast and who's going to benefit and who's not. Now, I'm going to try not get too technical here, but there's this really cool thing called the migrating motor complex, and that's basically the gut's cleaning wave. It's like a broom. It goes through and clears out the gut. Mm. It's really central to our gut health because it it happens every 90 to 120 minutes, but only when we're not eating. So if we're constantly snacking and grazing throughout the day, this MMC is not going to be switched on. And this can cause lots of problems like bacteria buildup, constipation, um, and yeah, just generally feeling probably really sluggish and not very nice, quite heavy. So its job is to move out kind of leftover food, bacteria, and waste products through the small intestine. Bit like, yeah, kind of like a housekeeping crew. And the benefit of fasting is it allows these MMC waves to complete fully. And that's why people with slow motility or post-meal bloating, often they will feel better with more spacing between their meals. And that's something I definitely recommend people to do if you're on the more constipated side, sort of spacing your meals out every 4 hours. And this is key, the MMC works best with regular gaps, not necessarily extreme fasting. So we don't have to fast to get the benefits of the MMC doing its job properly. It just means that you need to have those more regular gaps and basically probably snack less. So a lot of people who report all these really good feelings of fasting, I would say a lot of it is just that they are are not snacking and they're allowing the gut to do its job. And SIBO, this is stands for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So we should only have our bacteria living in our large intestine. We'll get a small amount in the small intestine, but it really should be sterile, pretty much sterile. And in cases of SIBO, which is really common, it's about 70% of people with IBS actually have SIBO. Um, the MMC actually becomes even more important for these people as well. And spacing your meals can actually reduce fermentation in the small intestine, which is going to stop those really intense bloating episodes. And fewer snacks means kind of less food for the bacteria as well. And yeah, I guess briefly on this, I guess longer fasting windows can backfire for people with SIBO because when someone underfuels, motility can actually slow more because the gut is really energy sensitive. So low calorie intake basically means low motility hormones like serotonin. So yeah, not always the best thing. It needs to be done in a way that kind of calorie intake isn't too severe, uh, isn't too restricted too much. And I think it's my last one. And yeah, I'm going to say there's a myth that fasting significantly increases microbiome diversity or it heals the microbiome, but this is not supported by human studies. And we know that fasting might change bacterial activity temporarily, but it does not meaningfully shift long-term microbiome composition. And diversity is more driven by our diet quality, fibers we eat, polyphenols, fermented foods, not your fasting duration. So I would say actually extreme fasting can be more detrimental for the bacteria because you're lowering your fiber intake. You're not as eating as many different foods, and you're going to be producing less short chain fatty acids as well, like butyrate. So definitely a bit of a yeah, I think a bit of a misunderstanding that people think it's going to be good for your really good for your gut health. And I'm sorry, I have so many slides here, and I think these literally are my last two, the psychology of fasting. Oh yeah, I just thought this was quite interesting that why fasting can feel addictive. Because fasting gives you a rush of dopamine, of course, your happy hormone, and adrenaline and cortisol, which is going to help you feel energized and alert. It kind of gives you this sense of discipline and control that can feel really empowering. And some people are definitely more prone to this feeling than others. Maybe that's sort of like more type A personality. I'm a type B person, so it doesn't affect me. So I don't think I'm kind of as at risk of this feeling of addictiveness. Um, but it's just quite interesting. I guess some people need to be careful because if you're a bit more vulnerable to that restrict binge kind of cycle, then this can kind of reinforce it a bit. So just some red flag signs that fasting is becoming disordered, and because the line between discipline and restriction can become very blurred. People with perfectionistic tendencies or anxieties are probably more likely to push fasting too far. So yeah, just want people to understand that fasting should absolutely feel flexible, supportive, and calm for the body, not obsessive or punishing in any way. So if you would tick any of those boxes, it's just the kind of warning sign um, to maybe hold back a bit. And yeah, because fasting is a psychological stress as much as it is a physiological one. And it should create freedom, clarity, and calm, and not fear, rigidity, or compensation cycles. So that is the end of my slides. You'll be pleased to know. And thank you so much for your attention and listening. I will just stop sharing so I can see Dr. Lambert and you all. See
Here we
your
are.
faces.
Here we are. Okay, we got some questions coming in. Wonderful presentation. I know everybody has some questions, some comments, things you're thinking about. Um, let's go with it. Ismail, go ahead with your first question. We'll take one question, then we'll go to the next question.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, good morning, sir. Good morning, the presenter, Miss Rebecca. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Yeah, um,
Um,
the information is somehow, well, let me put it this way, it's comprehensive. Thank you. Okay, my question is on how fasting influence psychological well-being and eating behaviors. The question: in what ways can fasting influence psychological well-being and eating behaviors, particularly in individuals with a history of disorder eating? I know you have mentioned some of this during the presentation, but I just wanted to elaborate, to make it more elaborate on that.
yeah, of course. So yeah, a bit on the last few slides there. Oh, is that your child there? So I
Yeah,
didn't see him. Oh, I was so sick or
yeah.
her. Oh,
He's sleeping.
hello.
He's sleeping.
Sorry,
He's sleeping.
sleeping. Oh,
Hello.
very nice. Yeah, so it can definitely be harder for some people to stay in that healthy zone, I guess, of fasting because of that personality tendency, whether you're more likely to be someone who's a bit more kind of on the extreme end, or if you're able to be more flexible with your eating patterns. I mean, I definitely see a link between a lot of people who even have gut health problems, and they're often people who have had restrictive diets in the past, which is quite an interesting link because often that well, we know there's such a link between our gut health and our mental health. So yeah, it's kind of chicken or the egg, but yeah, some people are going to be able to have that flexibility within their um, when they're doing fasting, and that's going to be kind of healthy and safe. But other people, they might go into that more restrictive binge eat cycle. So yeah, anyone with kind of a history of slightly disordered eating or or completely disordered eating certainly need to be careful when it comes to fasting.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm grateful.
Thank you, Snell.
Yeah, I don't see any other questions, but I have a question. Oh, we have a question from Alexander. I can wait. Alexander, go ahead and activate your microphone.
Thank you, Dr. Lambert. Hello, Miss Rebecca. Uh, that was a good presentation. I've learned a lot. I heard you were explaining things we feel in our bodies when we are fasting. That was the scientific ways to tell us what we feel, what is happening in our bodies when we are fasting. But we don't eat a, 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 a day, all the time. I saw you put fasting from 0 to 4 hours. Do you consider the time we are not eating as fasting also?
It's a good question. Yeah, yeah, I suppose 0 to 4 hours isn't really technically fasting. I mean, uh, could you say technically you're not eating, so any time you're not eating is fasted? That's a technicality I actually don't know the answer to, but ultimately your body's not really doing anything physiologically different at that stage. It's after that point, once your food's been digested. I suppose that's where the fasting, what we think of fasting, that's when that starts to occur. Those sort of processes, like once our insulin has dropped and we're starting to use our glycogen stores. I would say that's when we're starting to get into more of the fasting state. So it's a good question. I actually am not sure on the technicality of that, but I will
Yeah.
find out.
All right. Thank you. But for fasting is a matter of spiritual exercising. We see in some religion like Buddhism and others, they fast a long time. You said after 3 days, after 7 days, it becomes dangerous for the health. So what do you advise to those Buddhism who is fasting for very long time without eating, without doing that? Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't actually know the kind of the rules for those kind of religious fasts, whether they allow some kind of calories as well. I'm afraid I don't know. I'm a Christian, so I only know about Christian fasting, which is
Yeah,
usually only water.
I see.
So I'm not too sure, but it's a good question, and I know there are some allowances for females around the cycle. So, but other than that, I have to say I'm not. I don't know. I have to be honest.
All right, thank you.
Rebecca, just a few comments in chat. That Tomei would like you to come back and keep talking about this. So, and then Musa says, fasting can be good for a big man, but what about thin people?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it depends because you can be thin, but you can be metabolically not very healthy. So there's a bit of a term for it. I don't necessarily like it, but skinny fat, where sorry, where you actually have not much body fat, but if you look in your arteries, if you look internally, there's quite a buildup of cholesterol, or you have that internal visceral fat surrounding your organs. So I guess fasting can be very beneficial for those people because you can switch on autophagy and other processes which will help to reduce the LDL triglycerides, cholesterol, and also just help with that more like internal health that we can't necessarily see, like cell turnover and recycling. So yeah, difficult to say because if they're very thin and they don't have much body fat, then is fasting going to then take them into an underweight category and their BMI be in that kind of like dangerous zone? Again, it's very difficult to say for sure. Maybe they just need a more like gentle approach to fasting, not kind of too aggressive. But then when you get into that longer fasting state, that's when you really get the benefits from the more like internal point of view and the longevity side of things and cholesterol and all of that. So I don't know. It's difficult, very difficult to say. I'm not sure.
You know, you're making me think maybe a good topic in the future would be what sort of foods or nutritional supplements really help fasting, like keep the liver clean or keep the intestines clean or keep the kidney working properly.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much you can do from nutrition point of view to
Like I've heard
support.
cranberry kind of helps the kidneys function better, maybe cranberry during a fasting period.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I like the way you're thinking. Yeah.
Okay, let's go to Abdul. Go ahead and activate your microphone.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Doctor, for giving me the floor. You see, as far as I'm concerned, fasting is a pure theological issue, and it cannot be thoroughly understood outside the scope of, faith and religion. And, the principles, the rules governing fasting are specific, under the duration of each religion. This is a contribution I really want to make, and it's beneficial, from health perspective. It's also beneficial from moral perspective. It's also beneficial from monetary perspective, because during fasting it helps you, to avoid waste. You only use the essential, the most important things during fasting. By so doing, it helps you to save a lot of money, for future needs. You don't waste during fasting. And it also enables you to have empathy for the others, the poor. You see the poor because you go through similar suffering, faced by the poor. You see, and it's also improve your health. You see, given that it enhance, improve, gut, the stomach, the health of the stomach, the gut health. Thank you so much for giving me the floor.
Thank you for your thoughts. Yeah, really interesting to think about all those other things as well, other benefits, which I haven't even really touched on, but more from a kind of social point of view. Yeah, thank you.
So to kind of give a wrap up on this, if you're going to do fasting, if you're a woman, blend it into your menstrual cycle.
Yeah.
And then otherwise, you have to kind of look at your exercise pattern, your life pattern, when you can do this, and kind of make it work. It's kind of like conscious eating. You have to know kind of when to do it and how to do it. And
Yes.
then what else can you say about kind of summarizing how you can fit fasting into your diet safely?
Yeah, I mean, even thinking about the seasons, like when our bodies need more nourishment is really actually during the winter months. So maybe it feels more natural to do it as the weather's a bit warmer and your metabolic rate's a bit higher, it's a bit lower. Um, and naturally, yeah, your body does crave those heavier, more carbohydrate heavy foods during the winter. I'm sure some of you have noticed that, that kind of changes as it gets colder. You definitely want more nourishment. So I suppose that would be one. Thinking about your life stage, I guess, when you're postpartum, for example, I'm just thinking me recently, it's not a time that you'd probably want to be fasting because you're wanting to produce milk and your hormones are all over the place as well. So and if you have a very stressful life situation, it's probably not the best time because we know obviously fasting does increase cortisol levels in the body. And I think a lot of us have probably enough cortisol running high a lot of the time. And I speak for myself there. I think of anything else, but not feeling pressured, I guess. I think it's easy, speaking personally for myself, I see people in my professional setting or even, in my spiritual setting at church where I see people are fasting and I feel like, oh my goodness, I should be doing that too. But not feeling pressured because like hopefully it's been made clear we're all so different and fasting might be much, much easier for someone than it is for yourself potentially. Yeah, so it's giving yourself that grace, I guess, and um, yeah, and not feeling pressured by social media and things like that as well.
So is it safe if you want to do like an eating window of like 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. every day and not eat from 3 p.m. to 7 a.m. the next morning? Is that safe to do that on a regular daily basis?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Probably not again for women
Not for
around
women.
the second phase of their cycle, but I would say, yeah, for the majority of people, that's going to be doable. And I don't see any long-term risks of that. As long as you're getting enough protein in, fiber, variety, you have strength training, all those foundational things.
But you would, I think, probably maybe caution women that if they have those late night snacks,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
What can you say about those late night snacks,
Yeah.
like
Oh,
during the menstrual cycle?
yes. Those late night snacks. Yes. Part of me feels like, you should really honor those hunger cues that your body gives you because your metabolic needs are higher, so during that second half. But we can also get into a bit of a habit cycle there as well. So again, it's nuanced. We can easily just kind of slip into the same patterns of eating or giving our body comfort. Are we seeking that food, yeah, for comfort or for nourishment? And it's okay for sometimes food to just be comfort. I would say that's not that's supernatural and it's not necessarily a bad thing. But if it's happening all the time, every day, that's when we need to start thinking about using other things as a source of comfort rather than food.
Okay, just want to ask Jean Renaud, did you want to ask a question? I saw your hand up. Jean Renaud, do you want to activate your microphone? Go ahead, Jean Renaud. Are you there?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. It's a very useful one. Thank you for
Thank you.
the work. I see that I am living. Then people are basic and they want us to tell me that to prevent fasting being sick.
I did not quite get that.
Maybe could you type in your question because I think the signal's not very good.
Yeah, the volume is low. Yeah, Jean Renaud, if you can type in your question into chat. We're kind of running out of time right now, though. So Rebecca, do you see coming back and extending this topic is a good thing? Is there something else you want to move to, or do you see we can still go into this deeper and kind of tie it into other dietary regimens?
Yeah, I think it'd be nice to talk about what you were mentioning earlier, how we can support the body internally, the benefits of fasting, but kind of without actually having to fast. Things like triggering autophagy and helping to lower cholesterol and triglycerides, that kind of thing. Maybe it could be.
Through certain foods.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm open to anything. So let me know if you have any ideas as well. You can always get back to me. Or I don't know, pull a poll together or something, whatever you can do.
Well, there's an interesting question in here about fasting and older people. So maybe you could pick like a certain type of person, like an older person or a lactating mother or a growing child.
Yeah.
And think about, what diets make sense? Should a child fast, right? Does it make sense? Or do they just have to keep their energy? Do you want to stimulate that growth hormone through some type of fasting? Is that a good thing in children? Or do you have to keep their energy up all the time?
Yeah.
Maybe if you could pick like certain age groups and kind
Okay.
of just dial in how their diets would change or be optimal.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
Okay, well, we've run out of time. Rebecca Taylor does have to go right now. So, Rebecca, do you have anything more you want to add?
I don't think so. Just apologies. I have to run off today on time. But yeah, we can always pick up your questions next time. And yeah, I look forward to maybe doing a part 3 or something slightly different. And I will see you maybe in the new year. So
All
have a
right.
good Christmas, everyone.
Everybody's going to be able to unmute their microphones and say thank you and bye.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you,
Thank you
Rebecca.
so much.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you and bye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good to see everybody here. Keep your assignments coming.
Yeah,
Tell us about your
Dr.
stories about
Lambert.
fasting.
Dr. Lambert.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah.
Dr.
Rebecca,
Lambert.
you can go. You're good to go.
Yeah,
We
wait,
know you have to go.
Dr. Lambert, please, I have something to say.
No, but she has to go.
I
She-
know.
she-
but- Okay.
Okay.
All right. Can I say this, Dr. Lambert?
Yes, God.
Yeah. Can we stop the women from fasting? Hello, Dr. Lambert, are you with me?
I'm hearing you. Stop the
Yeah.
women from fasting.
Yeah. Can we stop the women from fasting since they have a lot of nutritional deficiency on their side? their men can fast on their behalf. I just want to find out from her. So my question is related to that anyway.
Well, as she said, there's a certain time in the menstrual cycle when fasting could be good for a woman, right? And then to be careful on the second half because the body's needing more energy. So yeah. So it would be good to hear from the women here, their experiences on fasting. Have they had problems with it? Have they noticed certain times during the menstrual cycle are better? Things like that. It's like you have to practice it. Like all knowledge, you have to put it into practice to really find out what's working for you. You just remember that, just remember that anything you learn in any of your classes, you have to apply it somehow and see how it works. And then you'll find out that you'll really learn the knowledge much better because you'll know how to use it. And with fasting, you have to put it into practice. Try, an eating regimen of 7 o'clock in the morning to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and then don't eat for the rest of the day. Put that into practice and see how it feels. And maybe you think, oh, maybe if I put in a snack at night, a little snack, and then see how that feels, you might think, oh, I didn't sleep very well because I ate a snack too late at night. Put it into practice and see how it feels. Test it out for yourself.
Yes. All right. Thank you, sir.
But it's good to have these classes to kind of give us knowledge to guide us into that practice. Because we can always do things better. It's like there's so many things to learn, to improve. Like I look at Sun Tum, who studies public health, and wow, he really is focused in on improving life for people and all these little tricks from nutrition to psychology to behavioral patterns really makes a difference. But it's like you have to kind of learn it and put it into practice. Alpha, do you have something to say? Are you there, Alpha? No. Okay. Anybody else have a comment, question about anything? Okay, then be back tomorrow. The course tomorrow, I think, is in Spanish. But if you come back tomorrow, I will be in chat translating the Spanish into English. So you'll be hearing Spanish, but you'll be reading the English translation in chat. So you can always come back and listen to that because I'll be here tomorrow for the class. And I'll translate for you in chat. All right, everybody. Great to see you today. Have a wonderful day. Good to see you too, Ali MD. Ismail Suntum, Ebsa, Abdul, Sudu, Rafael Musa, Armen, Steven, Malakeza, Alpha, Clegg, see you guys, Mawabo, Alexander, Pat, Daniel, Tanisha, Faziana, Moses, Shania, and Kennedy. Got everybody. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful day. See you back tomorrow. Bye-bye. Alpha, did you want to say something, by the way?
No, we're
Did you?
saying bye.
I was thinking maybe you had a story to tell as a woman's perspective on fasting. Did you?
No.
No. Okay. Okay, we're good.
All right.
All right, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Bye.